has an enormous foundation of assets from which we can build. And we have assets that exist that many cities would long for. We have, I learned through this process, we have a cluster of medical device companies in the North End. We have traditional manufacturers like Tony Sapienza. We have a waterfront and a fishing industry that everyone is very proud of. And we have two drivers of the local economy that most cities of our size and our history don't. We have a world-class university, and we have a world-class healthcare system. And those two organizations employ up to 10,000 people. They have an economic impact in the billions, not in the millions of dollars. And they have two leaders that wake up every single day, not just trying to move their institutions ahead, but trying to make sure that the economic impact of what they do every day is maximized for cities like New Bedford. And finally, we have a downtown that that is probably better than any that I've visited in New England, outside of downtown Boston, of course, in the last 10 years. And that's because all of that exists because of some of the work that has already taken place. And what we want to try to do is build upon that infrastructure and make it better. So we're not going to spend all day today walking through the details of the report, but what we'd like to do is just note three of them. And those are, most important, the governance of this plan. How are we going to execute and implement on this in a way in which we are successful? If we don't do it right, we will fail. If we do provide the governance necessary, we will succeed. Secondly, we'd like to talk a little bit about downtown zoning and commercial district zoning, because New Bedford has to make certain that it provides the motivations, the encouragement, the promotion, the incentives for people who want to invest in this town to invest in the way that the mayor and the city council and others would like them to invest. Colleen's going to talk a second about that. And finally, of course, we need a diversified port. We need to take advantage of the fishing industry. We need to allow it to continue to grow. We need to make certain that the wind industry can flourish. And we also need to make certain that the cargo industry can take hold and grow. So with that, we'll answer questions later. Let me introduce Tony, who's going to talk for a couple seconds about the governance structure of the execution of the plan.
Thank you, Jerry. The committee has put forth a very robust agenda for economic development, and we really need to figure out a way to continue the work that this committee has done. We have seen that partnerships, collaboration are the things that work in New Bedford. A recent example is the Economic Development Council working out an agreement with the New Bedford Industrial Foundation on how to align priorities so that the park can continue to develop and save staff resources in order to continue to grow both of those institutions, those agencies. So those kinds of collaboration are what we know work. So in our recommendations, one of the strategies is clearly to figure out how to do this work and to do it in a collaborative manner. And we have a model that we've used at the Economic Development Council where we've used ad hoc task force to bring together the appropriate parties. And I think working with Colleen and the Institute is a way that we should bring that kind of a task force together to figure out what is the best way to continue this work and provide the constituency that we need to support what's going forward. So the strategic recommendation number 2 specifically talks about forming such a task force or a committee, using an evaluator as well, or a facilitator to bring us all together. And I think that's where we're headed. We'd like to support that idea with the mayor and find the resources, because none of this work's going to get done if we don't find the resources. And clearly, we've been able to generate resources, but we need more. You have to plant some seeds, and you have to water the seeds to grow a tree. And most of the water is green around here, and it's called money. So we are going to have to find ways to support this work going forward. So key important recommendation that we work together to form this task force group and continue the work of the Regeneration Committee.
Colleen's going to speak next.
Thank you, Tony. I'm here in my capacity as the project manager of the Urban Initiative. We staffed the committee and provided some technical support, but I'm speaking about the zoning component, and I think to some extent I'll speak about that as the chair of the city's planning board as well. And zoning is a policy priority that came out of the committee that is probably a key short-term opportunity to promote the kind of growth and development we want to see, not only in the city's downtown, but also in the city's historic commercial corridors. And really what the committee called for was taking a form-based approach to zoning. And what that boils down to is, instead of thinking about land use in New Bedford based on historical parameters about the use of the premises, form-based zoning thinks about the look and feel. And where the look and feel of downtown in particular is so essential to New Bedford's ability to attract and retain the kind of population that we know we need to grow and sustain. Taking a form-based approach to zoning means that we can create a predictable environment for developers. We can make projects in the city and in the city's downtown low cost and streamlined. But at the same time, this process would integrate community input from the outset so that any project that would come before the planning board would automatically meet the requirements that city stakeholders set forth, and they would meet the needs of developers. So we encouraged in the committee's process, the committee encouraged the city to take a form-based approach to zoning. And I do understand that there are already some wheels in motion there, where the city has recently hired an assistant city planner who can work on that. And I understand that the city's office, or the New Bedford Economic Development Council, is also seeking some resources to move that forward. Thank you.
Dave Waxler, who is the city's expert on waterfront sport activities. Dave, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So, for those of you who don't know what we do, we basically handle about 95% of the international shipping that comes in and out of New Bedford. And we own a lot of the freezers, and we don't own any of the product in the freezers, so we deal with all the fishing industry. We ship seafood out to countries in Africa and Europe, and we bring in basically fresh produce from either Africa or from other South America. So the key is that we handle 95% of what goes on in this port, and this Regeneration Committee, in trying to identify specific underutilized assets, which Jerry mentioned earlier, noted that the state pier has greater opportunities. And because we deal internationally and we deal with other ports, we know how other ports deal with their states or their governments in a much better way than the state pier is being handled right now. Earlier in the year, we determined that we could make some capital improvements to the state pier. And the mayor called me and said, is this for real? Can you really bring in more ships if we make some of these capital improvements at the state pier? And I told him yes. Tomorrow night at 7 p.m., the Polar Light, which is a ship coming from Morocco, will come to New Bedford. We will unload that ship. It's the first of 12 or 15 ships that are bringing citrus in from Africa. We have, as a private company, we have lived up to what we said we were going to do, bring additional jobs to New Bedford. Each ship, when it comes in, has well over 100 men working around the clock. We'll work right through the weekend. If they have to work through the holiday, they will. Unfortunately, trying to get the capital improvements done at the state pier has been cumbersome, euphemistically speaking. It has been extremely difficult to deal with the layers of the state that are in the Department of Environmental Energy and then the Recreation Department. The mayor knows this very well. The city has been fabulous with us. I can't give enough praises for the Harbor Development Commission team. I can't give enough praises for our own delegations, Bill Strauss, Tony Cabral, and Mark Montigny, and the mayor's team. But there's a huge burden there, and from the private sector point of view, I have to be hopeful that with the change in the government in the state level, this underutilized asset that the mayor's regeneration team has identified could work out a scheme for local control. We don't have to give up local, we don't have to give up ownership to the state. There are many examples that we know of in places like Savannah, Georgia, and other states like Delaware, and even Port Hueneme, where our director, our former Harbor Development Director, Kristen Deacons, went to. They have beautiful cooperation. We haven't had it, and we need it. And hopefully, this report will lead us in that way. So we have hope, and I guess we have patience. But I really want to thank the mayor for being the first administration that's gotten behind a real change that just has to take place. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
I would love to. I would love to.
You need that introduction.
Right. Well, more than anything else, I just want to say thank you emphatically for all the work of the committee members, and there were many. This is the leadership of the region, Greater New Bedford. Business leadership, nonprofit leadership, and we have the names here. I won't go through all the names. Many of them are here. But they took time out of their busy lives, out of their busy professional lives, to weigh in on an important report in the life of this community at a very critical juncture in our history. The primary purpose of this report was to unify the community around, and I say the community, I mean Greater New Bedford, the region, around certain economic development priorities. For us, it's always been about creating enough economic opportunity so that people can get good jobs, put food on the tables of their family homes, to put a roof over their kids' heads, to send their kids to college and live out the American dream right here. That's what happens in great American cities, and that's what we're building right now. And there's been over the years no shortage of good ideas. There have been lots of good ideas, some adopted, some have fallen by the wayside, some over time that everybody agreed to, but weren't executed on, weren't acted upon. The idea now, at a point when Greater New Bedford is more unified than ever around its priorities, is to execute, to drive these things relentlessly. And this is what we'll do. And I'm holding this up. People should become very familiar with this report. It's not entirely done. We want public input before we remove the word draft from the front cover. But yeah, and because of that, because it's important to get broad public input. We can't claim that we thought of every idea and dotted every I and crossed every T. But the committee did a tremendous job in figuring out what's most important. What's important to note also is what this isn't. It is not a master plan. It is not an academic piece. This is a very actionable strategy to drive the region's assets. And Jerry went through them, and you heard from David and Tony and Colleen about the things that we have going for us. I want to say thank you very emphatically to Derek's team at EDC, to Colleen, and to Ben Erickson for putting this together. I want to thank most of all Jerry Kavanaugh for providing the indispensable leadership necessary for this plan to take hold, to gather ideas, to assimilate them, and put them in a form that is understandable for everybody and most importantly, very actionable. This is what we're going to be driving in the next few years. This is not, I will pledge to you, as we all sit here today, this is not a plan that will sit on the shelf. Many of these things are already in motion. Most of them are already in motion. This is what we're going to advocate for. This is what we're going to prioritize. This is what we're going to put our energy behind. As we have said this so many times before, we've often talked about New Bedford as having lots of potential. And the sources of potential range from the port, the downtown, the university, the healthcare system, the infrastructure we have, our great neighborhoods, and of course our great people. Well, we keep talking about potential, and it is really now up to us to activate that potential so that we can leave this place better off. We are rebuilding a great American city. That's the business we're in right now, and it is all about leveraging assets, about getting behind a very clear vision. And so when we go to investors, potential investors in this region, we can hold this up and say, this is what we're doing in New Bedford. And I say we're not just city government, but the private sector, the nonprofit sector, everybody, and citizens can say, this is what we're doing. This is what's important to us, so that it's very clear to folks the direction we're going in. So there's no uncertainty around conveyed to them about the next step. And with the next governor, a governor like Baker, we want him to succeed as governor in this place. And in order to do that, we need to be on the same page in terms of priorities. The business of economic development is primarily a local one. It's up to us to create the priorities, to create the strategy, and that's what this is. And for the state and federal governments to operate in service of those priorities. That's how it works best. That's how it should work here. So I'm, more than anything else, I just want to say thank you for all of the hard work. There's a lot of work ahead. I do believe that we should continue to utilize to avail ourselves of all the goodwill and all the insights and all the energy that was committed to this report. In other words, we want to institutionalize some body, whether it's called Regeneration or something else, going forward. There are cities like Pittsburgh and Lowell and a number of other places around the country that have been able to regenerate their economies, to reinvent themselves fairly successfully by having some mechanism, some body of leaders that can do long-term planning, that can weigh in on the important issues, that can guide the political leadership. The mayors come and go. The leadership in the community tends to be in place for much longer, and we need that kind of continuity because this is not an overnight exercise. This will take, and future iterations of this will take years to be executed on. The work is never done, but what we do need is, and what we already have, is a commitment to improving the city. We need an institution, a set of institutions that can drive our priorities in the long run. That's what we're really up to here. So I just want to reiterate, thank you, Jerry, for the report. This is very well done, and this is something that we're going to look back on years from now and say, you know what, this was a critical point in the history of the city of New Bedford. This is where we really started to take off. Thanks, everybody.
And we're happy to take questions, and depending on the question, there are a number of people who can answer them, including other members of the committee who are here. And let me just introduce them because they played an important role. First of all, Chancellor Grossman, who I mentioned earlier, is here with us today. Nick Frist, the president of Bay Coast Bank. Liz Isherwood. Elena. Sorry about that. Mike Metzler is here. Maureen, a graduate of Bishop Stang High School. Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Simone Rios from the Standard Times. What are the next actions? We talked a lot about actionable plans and strategies. What are the next steps that are going to be taken to realize some of these ideas?
Simone, get yourself a copy and ask them specifically about which one are you referring to?
In general, what are some of the
Yes.
concrete steps?
I do think the first thing that I would like to do next is get our arms around the governing structure. And that's where Tony Sapiens can be very helpful to us, as can Derek. We need to figure out how the execution of this plan is going to be governed. I think it's a crucial first step.
So I think the answer in part depends on which component you're talking about. So I think Jerry's right. A big part of the challenge has been and will continue to be, unless we act, one of capacity. Cities of our size, metropolitan areas of our size, have many more folks devoted to the work of economic development. We're understaffed. We ask Angela and Jeff and Derek, we need more folks on the task of driving these items and of generating a pipeline of business prospects. We fund the Economic Development Council largely through two things. One is the revenue from the loan program, as well as community development block grants. And it's not enough. Cities of comparable size have many more people devoted to the task of generating business opportunity. So that's a big thing. That's a big conversation. It's going to require resources. We talked a little bit about continuing the Regeneration Committee in some form, and we're going to need to form a task force, I think, to figure out what that model looks like. There have been successful models, as I said, in Pittsburgh, in Lowell, in other cities, and we need to figure out what's right for New Bedford. As for the other items, some of this stuff is just left up to the city to drive. So if you look at, Colin talked about zoning, and that's something that we've talked to the city council about, and I think the city council is warming up to the idea of form-based zoning, and especially now that we've passed the Community Preservation Act, form-based zoning becomes all the more relevant because form-based zoning, when you really get down to it, is a set of rules geared toward preservation, preserving the built environment as it is. And that's important because Americans want walkable, authentic, and particularly historically preserved spaces. That's one of the things that makes our downtown very attractive. Community benefit district, that's something that is already underway, as you know. Institutional investment in the downtown, that's something that we need. We need institutional anchors, whether they're private sector or public sector anchors in the downtown. We need more residential density in the downtown, the length of the retail that these are discussed. Around the port, we are trying to modernize the port of New Bedford, which is an effort that really has never been done, despite the fact that we have a deep water port. The infrastructure that has existed over time that supported the center of the world's whaling industry and the biggest fishing port in America has, to a great degree, been privately funded. We need modern port facilities. The work on the South Terminal, the New Bedford Marine Commerce Terminal, will be a big boon to the city, but we're not done here yet with the port by any stretch. It's going to require major public investments, dredging and switching out the New Bedford Fairhaven Bridge and building out other port facilities up and down the harbor. Land use planning, that is something that's in motion right now. The state pier, David is absolutely right. There needs to be local management of the state pier. We've been advocating for that in the state. We believe that that 8-acre piece of property is arguably the most valuable parcel of property in the entire region, and it is woefully underutilized, and we need for sure to put it to better use. And many of the current uses can be amplified, including cargo, including ferry service and other things if it's managed the right way. And then the last piece concerns advanced manufacturing, which is a whole lot about developing clusters and about workforce development. Those are efforts that are already underway. So this is a long way of saying, I'm going to give you that detail so to illustrate that many of these things are in motion right now, and by virtue of going through this exercise, there can be a heightened focus on each one of them and the importance of the overall strategy of rebuilding the city.
Okay. Are there plans in place to form that task force or some type of community organization yet, or is that still to come?
That's still to come. I don't think we'll wait too long to form a task force. I suspect that a lot of the folks who are on the Regeneration Committee will be part of that.
And community meetings, to get some reaction there, when are they going to happen?
Yeah, I don't know that we will, so this will be posted in many places where folks can review it. I don't know that we will do community meetings as such, like as we have, as the city has in years past with master plans and such, because, you know, this is, people need to understand, this is a business development strategy. It is not a boil the ocean master plan that tries to address every conceivable issue under the sun. There's nothing in here, for instance, about education, even though improving our school systems is vital to our economic development. This is about developing business prospects for the city in the long run. So, although I want to make clear, we want public input on this. This isn't a planning exercise that would lend itself to neighborhood type meetings. Anybody else?
You mentioned that mayors come and go, so what's the guarantee that the next mayor will buy into this?
Well, therein lies the importance of having a body outside of government that supports an overall economic development strategy. Therein lies the importance of the stability that an organization like that can lend. And we have these 2-year terms in office, which I'm on record as saying is not a good idea for an enterprise the size of the city of New Bedford. But be that as it may, economic development is driven only in part by what government does. A lot of it is driven by most of it is driven by what private sector participants do. And the strategy in every place in America is driven largely by the business community. And so the idea of continuing the Regeneration Committee in some form under some name has proven in other places to work well to provide continuity from mayoral administration, from one mayoral administration to the next, and I think that's the idea with this.
Guys, a little more, I was talking to Colleen before the meeting about this form-based zoning. It's a fascinating idea. I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit about what that would look like and what the impact would be on the downtown and how it would be implemented. Is it something that the city council has to take up and vote on? How would that work?
Yeah, so as Colleen said, traditionally zoning has all been about uses. You can't, zoning doesn't allow you to put an oil refinery in the middle of a residential neighborhood. There are restrictions, and those use restrictions would remain in place. But the form-based zoning overlays another set of rules that have to do with the look, the massing, the scale, the setbacks of buildings, the shape of things. So, and it usually keeps the shape of what is already in place. So in places like the downtown, Brock Avenue, Rivet Street, Acushnet Avenue, those are these neighborhoods that are older and that have a very walkable feel. These are places that we want to preserve well. So in terms of process, what other cities have done is have had a fairly lengthy planning exercise, with a lot of community input on what the shape of things ought to look like, what those rules ought to look like. And so that would take a fair amount of work. The city council would have to adopt a set of rules ultimately. And then they would be implemented like other zoning rules. All right, guys, this is a lot to look forward to. Let me just say this: this is bringing the city together in ways that have never existed before, and it's left up to all of us, city government in particular, but everybody else, to really drive this agenda, and that's what we pledge to you. This is not, again, and I will emphasize, this is not something that's going to sit on the shelf. So there's a lot to look forward to, and this is all about realizing the potential that we know the city has. All right, thank you everybody for all of the work.